Hey remote stars installer wannabes, I have a little surprise for you, or maybe a little addition for how to install a remote start, and I'm using the example of a Dodge Nitro because I just finished one. Sorry I didn't make the video on the car, but as a matter of fact this way it will stay a little bit more versatile for different vehicles, I guess. But here's what I ran into. The iData link is what we were using, and we had the module ADS-DLSL-CH3. That is the module that you need for an '08 Dodge Nitro. Now if you get that install guide, which by the way is on idatalink.com, yep, and you go grab the install guide for the manual for the module that you bought, and then you end up in a kind of a mess. This manual is not really the best, it's kind of confusing. So what you have to do is you go find your vehicle, which is posted on this left hand side. If you scroll down, this is page 3 is where it starts. Now we're in page 4 and we picked the Dodge Nitro, okay? Dodge Nitro. Now you move over and actually you go in the top, you check the year, make sure you're in there, and then you see the install type. That is where you want to go. Make sure you have the right wiring diagram, okay? So Dodge Nitro right there, and install type 7. Okay, so now we go to install type 7, and then we have our wire cross-reference chart. Okay, and below that we have our wiring for our little box. So this is our box. Whoops. Right there. That's it's actually very tiny, that box. But anyway, now what we did is, before we had that iData link cable, which is pretty much a 4-pin cable that you can put on this guy right here. Before we had that, we actually put up all this wiring with the dotted lines. Well, you put that iData link cable on the bypass module, and the starter module, then you're fine. You don't need any of those dotted lines. Plus, you don't need the red ones either, which is your tag. Anyway, the problem we were having was not actually the wiring diagram, but what they told us in the very top. If you have a Dodge Nitro and you cannot get the car to stay running, this is the problem right here. Multiplex, purple brown, that is wrong. When we did that, what happened is we first thought that our transponder didn't work because the car started, it ran, and then it quit after like 2 seconds. And we thought, okay, well our transponder doesn't work. Well, it did, because the way it worked is you have the antenna cable, which is going to our key log right there, and it has the chip in it. The chip is in the very bottom of the antenna. To program it, you take the key apart, you take that cable off the transponder, and you take this little chip that is in there into the empty key case, and then you put that to the key lock, program it according to the instructions. Okay, so that chip is programmed. How did we know that? Because we took the chip and held it to the key lock, and that little flashing light in the display went off. If there was not a transponder on the key lock and you turn the key on, there's a little flashy light, a red light that was blinking, telling us, wait a second, there's no key here, I'm not gonna run for you. But that was working, and so our loop was working as well, because when we started the car, the light went off. But we did not keep the ignition on, which was modified by the bypass module. It was supposed to send a signal into our key lock to maintain the car running, to keep it running in ignition. but of course there's no key in, so you would have to go with this multiplex shit. This is our multiplex, this box right there. What does that mean, multiplex? Well, you have only two wires going in, and the one is a power wire, the other one is a ground. Now, how do we know key positions? Because of these things. Those are resistors, so they have different resistances. When you check it with a multimeter and you flick through the key positions, you actually get different resistance on that wire. I ended up with a purple gray wire, and that purple gray wire was pin number 2 on our key lock, because purple brown is actually on the immobilizer, which is the little box, a little gray box with I think 8 wires or something, and that little gray box had nothing to do with our car, you know, shutting off, because we realized transponder was working, but we lose power to the car, and that was caused by this frickin' multiplex shit. Anyway, so we ended up using a different wire than what the manual said. Purple gray is the wire we wanted, and then our module was able to maintain the car running. So if you run into that problem, what you're gonna do is you take your multimeter and you go to the rear of your key or your key lock, and you check for a wire that has different resistances with flicking the key through. So and then you go in the pins of the key lock with your multimeter and just ground the one lead, put the other lead through the pins, flick the key, and when the resistance changes, that is your multiplex wire. Any car that has this multiplex shit on the key lock, that is what you gotta do to find the right wire. Now the other thing that happened was we didn't have a proper tag signal. We were using CT5072 remote starter box, which looks like this from ProStart. We didn't get the tag signal properly going in there. What happened was, first of all, we couldn't program it in auto mode. It never worked. And so what we have to do is we actually flicked the jumper right there. Okay, and you change them to tag threshold high or normal. Well, we were in normal originally, and we went to high. Did that, and then programmed this whole box in the manual mode. So you have to open the hood pin, and then you have to turn the ignition on and hold the brake pedal depressed and hit unlock and all this kind of crap. And then suddenly our car not only started a lot nicer, but it also worked very well. Plus, you need to program both this piece for the iData link as well as the pipe bypass. Make sure you select the right mode going into iData link. And this box you have to program for ADS. That is what iData link is. They use that bypass module's ADS. So make sure you program this thing right. And then the easy thing is hooking up those wires, because really all you need is that big power supply. You need the tag signal, and that is pretty much it to make this work. Okay. Of course, snip that loop if you have an automatic. But that really is it. And so to summarize this up, what we need is the, of course, remote starter kit using ProStart in my example here. The iData link bypass module utilizing the ADS bypass system, and we'll need, of course, the wiring, the hood pin, we need the tag signal from the front, we need a power signal from the front, and that is that. We need a ignition wire connection and the MUX under the dash. We need a ground to the chassis. We need to hook up the necessary wires to our modules that give us our fanciness, like alarms and doors and all that crap if you want. We need to snip the loop on the box, And oh yeah, that, wait a second. Get rid of this relay. We do not need that in a Dodge Nitro of 2008 and newer. And well, it just kind of saves you a lot of wiring, saves you a relay, and it saves you in a diet. Okay. So yeah, you don't need that. We didn't put it in either, and it works fine. So you directly hook up your multiplex wire off the bypass module directly to the multiplex of the key, and you're done. And so I hope that was useful. If you had an issue with the Nitro like we didn't have the chance to talk to professionals. I mean, it's their trade. No one wants to talk to you about it, pretty much. And the internet is useless. Maybe I help you, I hope. Let me know how you make out, or if you have questions, maybe I can help you. I learned a lot on that one. So, yeah, see you next time.